I wanted off my chest, so here, they tried to keep us quiet for decades. Trying to make the world think evil like the one we see in film doesn't exist, but it does. He lives among us, watching our every move. I was 26, thought I was solid. Grew up around hunters. I've slept in snowbanks with a loaded rifle and a busted lighter. I've gutted deer at midnight and tracked coyotes through storms. I know the woods. That summer, I took a seasonal gig as a camp counselor, one of those isolated backwoods jobs where you're babysitting more than anything. No cell signal, spotty radio, just tall pines, shitty cabins, and half-broken equipment from the 80s. My dad said it'd be good for me, said I reminded him of himself when he was younger. I didn't drink much back then. Smoked a little, sure, but mostly I just kept to myself, and the other staff let me. There were 8 of us. I remember them all. Andrew, Crunch, Victoria, Megan, Marcus, Samantha, Alex, and me. We were split across 2 bunks and rotated shifts watching the kids. The first few nights, it was just regular shit. Campfires, horror stories, the smell of citronella candles, and mildew. Someone kept leaving the pantry open and raccoons got into the snacks. Someone else kept hearing footsteps outside their window. That's camp. Nothing felt wrong, until it did. It started with the quiet, the kind of quiet that you don't notice right away. No crickets, no frogs, no branches moving, even when the wind should have been there. One night, I stepped outside the bunk and just stood there. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath. That's when I first heard it, that clicking sound. Metallic, slow, clack, clack, clack. Like someone walking through gravel with a broken leg dragging chains. I swept the area with my flashlight, but it never showed. Just barely outside the light's edge. Every time. Andrew joked it was the cabin ghost. He was the youngest of us, still had that reckless, dumbass energy, trying to impress girls and crack jokes about skinwalkers. He went to check the generator by himself when the light started flickering. That was the last time any of us saw Andrew alive. His scream came fast and raw. One of those sounds that rips through the trees and makes everything inside you freeze. I was the first one out the door, rifle in hand. Thought maybe he'd slipped or been bit. But when I found him, Jesus. He was on his back, chest cavity torn open like a busted bag. I could see ribs, glistening, red, wet. His mouth was still moving, but no sound came out. Something had crushed his throat, like it wanted him to choke on silence. There were these marks all over him, not claw marks, not bite marks. Human, like fingers had torn through him with rage. And behind him, just for a second, I saw it, tall, filthy. A coat like it had been stitched from something dead. Its face, or what I thought was a face, was the bottom half of someone else's jaw, stretched and dried like leather. Its eyes, they didn't blink, just sick yellow, like old urine in snow. It tilted its head, watching me, not like a beast, not like a man either. Just watching, like it was deciding if I was next. I didn't shoot. I didn't move. I just stood there while it melted back into the trees. We panicked. Crunch barred the doors. Samantha locked the kids inside their cabin. Victoria wouldn't stop shaking. Marcus was trying to radio for help, but the signal was gone. Not weak, gone. We argued for hours. Half of us wanted to hike out. I told them flat out, if it can tear through Andrew, it'll rip through us in the woods one by one. That's what it wanted, for us to scatter. So we waited till daylight. Crunch and I sat guard all night. I asked him if he believed in evil, and he didn't answer. He just loaded his shotgun and watched the trees. The next day, Crunch went missing. He went to piss. We told him not to go alone, but he waved it off. Said he had a machete. Big guy. Strong. Thought he was unkillable. We found him hanging from a meat hook under the canoe dock. I swear to God, a fucking hook buried through his jaw and out his mouth like a goddamn Halloween prop. But it wasn't that. It was the look on his face. His eyes were still open, and they looked like he'd seen something that broke his mind right before the light left him. Victoria started screaming and didn't stop for 5 full minutes. She clawed her own arms trying to wake up. Like this was some nightmare. Marcus vomited. I had to pull Alex away from the dock. He just froze, staring at Crunch, whispering at me. It's watching us. That was when I knew we weren't getting out by being careful. This thing, it didn't hunt like an animal. It waited. It watched. It chose. We made a plan to escape at dawn. Take only what we need. Move quiet. Stick together. But that night, the power went out. The lights, the backup generator, the emergency flashers, everything. Darkness swallowed the camp like a black mouth. That was the worst night of my life. Victoria vanished from her bed. We found her blanket torn, smeared with blood like she'd been dragged out. Not a single scream, not a struggle, just gone. I heard footsteps outside my cabin. Then the clack, that goddamn metal on wood clack. I held my knife and waited, knowing it could be behind the door any second. I heard something breathing outside, slow, deliberate. Bennett left. Now I don't know what happened the rest, it's all a blur. I haven't tried to make contact since it happened. I don't even remember leaving the camp. All I know that I made it out after 2 days of running. My clothes torn, legs cut up, starving. I don't even remember how I found the road. I just remember waking up in the back of a sheriff's truck, his eyes wide like he'd seen a ghost. Maybe he had. I still dream about it. That sound, that face, those eyes. And I know I didn't escape it. I survived it. There's a difference. You ever feel watched in the woods, really watched you leave? You don't blink, you don't breathe heavy, you don't say its name, because it's still out there. And I think it remembers who I am. A shortcut to death. You ever stand at the bottom of a hill and swear it grew since the last time you climbed it? That's where I was. 12 a.m., drunk enough to feel brave, lazy enough to make bad choices, and tired enough not to care. I stared up the street like it was Everest, then made the decision that would ruin the night and my life, literally. I took a shortcut. You know the kind. Dark alley, suspicious puddles, smells like regret and expired takeout. One of those backways that cities pretend don't exist until someone dies in them. I hadn't made it halfway before I heard the footsteps. Heavy, fast, coming right for me. Wallet, now. The guy had a ski mask, a knife, and the dead eyes of someone who still says YOLO unironically. I put my hands up, heart hammering in my chest. No problem, man, I said. Take it. It's mostly expired coupons and punch cards for a taco place that closed in 2019. He didn't laugh. $7? He said, putting my wallet in his pocket. Should have mugged me 5 hours ago before I started drinking. I said sarcastically. Clearly not amused at my lack of funds, he lunged at me. As unsteady on my feet as I was, I still managed to grab his wrist and stop the knife from meeting my gut. But then something happened. He froze. His eyes went wide, not at me, but past me. I turned to look and saw what he saw. A tall, shadowy figure standing behind us, cloaked in black, holding something, glowing. Confused, I released my grip. The mugger panicked. The knife jerked. The heat as the knife slid into my stomach was intense. The mugger dropped the knife and ran away screaming. And I died. Date with death. You'd think death would be more dramatic. More choirs, bright lights and bliss, less alley. Instead, I was standing next to my own body, bleeding next to a pile of trash bags, watching a floating skull in a cloak scroll through an app like he was checking his Instagram. A tablet. An actual glowing tablet, in Death's hands. Wait, is that an iPad? I asked. He glanced at it. Technically, it's a die-pad. Really? I asked, impressed by the pun. That's what we called it. Marketing had fun with that one. Legal hated it. Apple threatened to sue us for copyright infringement. I blinked. Apple's that powerful? Death nodded solemnly. They once buried a demon in litigation so long he gave up and went back to hell signing an NDA. Anyway, he said, standing to his full height, towering over me. D. Winters, he said, voice booming like someone who'd practiced in cathedrals. Your time on this mortal plane has come to an end. I stared at him. That's it, D. Winters? I don't even get a full name. I just got prison shanked by a tweaker, and you greet me like a cold caller? The figure paused. Apologies, he said, lowering his head and taping the screen. Full name retrieval. He gave it a second attempt. Daniel Winters, your time. I cut him off. Dylan. He blinked, which was impressive for someone with no eyelids. I beg your pardon? Confusion echoing in his voice. Dylan Winters, I repeated. Death frowned, or gave the best skeletal approximation. I see, Death murmured. He zoomed in on the tablet's screen, his bony finger pinching and swiping like a confused grandfather. He opened the camera app by accident and took a picture of his own feet. Damn it, he muttered. That's the third time this week. He tapped furiously. Somewhere down the block a pedestrian's phone dinged. Death winced. Ugh, I think I just airdropped my foot pic to that guy with the labradoodle. A few taps later, and he opened the soul profile, revealing a selfie of a man in a ski mask, holding a knife and flipping off the camera. He tapped the screen again. It buzzed angrily. Ugh. Great. The afterlife's Wi-Fi is acting up again. He said with a gesture that would have been an eye roll if he had eyes. You guys have Wi-Fi? I say in utter disbelief. It's eternal, but not unlimited. Limbo uses all the bandwidth streaming reruns of Friends. I crossed my arms. So you were meant to collect the mugger's soul? Death gave me a long look. I died because you don't know how to use your freaking death app. This is my life, not a DoorDash order. I snap at him. In hindsight, yelling at death is probably not the best idea, but I was already dead. He adjusted his cloak like it was a nervous habit. It seems I may have appeared prematurely. The mugger saw me, panicked, and, well, killed me. I say far too bitchy for a man of my size. Yes, instead of dying while running off after you disarmed him, he inadvertently caused your death. Which was not, I repeat, not on today's agenda. I glared at him. Then fix it. It's not that simple. Once a soul separates from its body, it cannot return. I walked over and poked my own corpse. Feels like there's still some life left. I say, glaring at death. Death scrolled the terms and conditions. Aha, if the soul originally marked for death is collected before sunrise, the correction can be made. I stared at him. So, if we get the mugger's soul before dawn, I can live? Yes, we have roughly, he checked his watch, 5 hours and 42 minutes. No Apple Watch? I asked sarcastically. They don't make bands small enough for my wrists, and you're being sarcastic, he said, pulling down the sleeve of his cloak, hiding his stick-thin arms. I sighed. Well, I hope you've got an Uber account on that thing. Death lowers his eyes. They don't let us put personal apps on these things. No app store, only apparitions, he added wistfully. I wonder if passing over would be easier than dealing with this guy. Death is in the details. We started at the crime scene, where Death poked around like a forensic investigator at a birthday party. Amateur mugger, he muttered. No gloves, no plan. Tattoo that says loyal to the bone on his left wrist. That'll help, he says, adding notes on his tablet. We know his name. Can't you just Google him on the Death Wiki or something? I ask. We get a name and place he don't like. Stalk people, that would be weird. He shrugs. Should I be worried that you're taking this so casually? I asked. Look, I had to reap Betty White. This is nowhere near as depressing, he says, pointing to a wall with a camera. I stopped in my tracks. Ah, I love Betty White. Death nodded solemnly. Everyone does. Imagine how much hate I got after that. I trended on Twitter for 4 days. Someone started a petition to cancel me. It goes so many names. He sighed. The other deaths threw their sandals at me when I got back to the office. I blinked. Wait, there are other deaths? He turned and stared at me. I'm spending almost 6 hours trying to save you. You think no one else is dying right now? Of course there are other deaths. He paused, then added more quietly. So many sandals. We checked the security cams. Death simply waved his hand and played the footage on a nearby wall like a projector. The mugger had fled toward the strip mall, retracing the mugger's path. Death waved his bony hand and projected the mugger's escape route like a murdery slideshow. We followed him across a few rooftops, through a gas station, and finally to a dingy dive bar called the Stab Inn. Yes. Seriously. That's way too on the nose, I muttered. Pun-based establishments are statistically 73% more likely to harbor soul offenders, Death replied. Soul offenders? I question. Those that have either evaded death or have sold their souls and refused to pay up, he offers nonchalantly. We entered the dive bar like a discount Magnum PI, and whoever his partner is, one glowing dead guy and a being that absorbed light. No one noticed. Rude, I thought. Inside, the mugger was downing shots and talking to himself, or the bartender, or a chair. Hard to tell. I'm telling you, man, he slurred. He had a foam tablet. Its light lit up his skull face. I approached. Hey, pal? The mugger turned, stared at the glowing apparition of the man he killed, and promptly screamed. He ran. Fast, faster than he had after killing me. Death and I followed, the former floating through walls, the latter opening them politely. We cornered him in an alley behind the bar. Ironic that he would also die in an alley. Back off, the mugger shouted, brandishing his knife again. I ain't going back to jail. You're not, Death said. You're going to the afterlife. The mugger's knife dropped an inch. Wait, so am I dead? You were supposed to be, I said, crossing my arms. Instead, I am. The mugger's face contorted. You're kidding. Nope, I say straight-faced. So now what? You're gonna kill me? Death tilted his skull. Technically, I already did. Just the wrong you. The mugger looked at me, then at Death, then at the sky. How much time do I have? Death checked the tablet. 3 minutes. At 5:57 a.m., in the back lot of a convenience store. Because where else? Death tapped his tablet. The mugger's phone dinged in his pocket, took it out and looked at the screen. He blinked. Did you, for reals, just send me a picture of your feet? I looked at Death. Seriously? Death sighed and muttered, airdrop is the real curse. I wish we went back to scrolls instead of scrolling, he said, tapping the screen again. This time a portal opened against the wall, blues, greens, and golds all twisted together in the most beautiful shape I've ever seen. Step inside and you will move on from this mortal plane, Death said, pointing at the swirling, pulsing vortex. What if? And hear me out, I don't. The mugger said, eyeing what he was hoping was an escape route out of the alley and away from the big scary skull in the road. Then you will suffer unimaginable pain when you do die. Checking his tablet and sliding a finger up, Death continued. Next Thursday, at 6:27 p.m., you will be shot by an off-duty police officer that you try to mug and bleed out slowly from an excruciating wound. It will not be quick. The mugger scratched his head. Okay, but what's the afterlife situation? Are there perks? Death's last laugh. The mugger looked at me. No hard feelings? You stabbed me, Dick. I spit. Okay, some hard feelings, he says, shrugging. The mugger slumped. Do I get to haunt anyone? Sure, Death said. You get to pick one X and a houseplant. He considered it. Okay, fine, but I want a cool pose, like when they find me, badass, heroic, flexed up like I went out fighting. The Death and I exchanged a look. Absolutely, I said with a solemn nod. Totally, Death agreed. We'll make you look like a legend. The mugger gave a thumbs up and stepped into the portal. Seconds later, Death and I stood over the now lifeless body. So, I asked, how heroic are we talking? Death cracked his bony knuckles. Full yoga swan? Oh, definitely. Maybe jazz hands too. We got to work. By the time we finished, the mugger looked like he was mid-breakdance battle, one leg in the air, head tilted back dramatically, fingers splayed in a double peace sign. Death tilted his skull. He said badass. He didn't say by whose standards. Let the memes begin, I said. Death held up his tablet to take a picture, but took a selfie instead. He tried to delete it. The mugger's phone dinged again. I looked at him. You really are technologically challenged. He shrugged and turned to face me. Well, Dylan, we have successfully amended an accounting error. No need to escalate this to management and tarnish my record, he says, raising his hand for a high five. No high fives for you. You get no high fives for fixing your own screw-up. I say, my brow furrowed. He lowers his hand slowly. Wait, how do I escalate his with management? I ask. Death tapped his tablet. My chest burned. My heart kicked. I gasped and woke up, in pain, but alive. The alley smelled worse than I remembered. My wallet was still missing, but I was breathing. That seemed like a fair trade. I looked down and the blood still stained my shirt, but there was no wound underneath. Then something drifted down onto my chest. A note? No, a tarot card, the death card. Charred around the edges. I picked it up and on the back, burned into the card, were 3 words. See you soon. I stared at it, then looked around the alley. How soon? I called out. Come on, man. How soon? I shout again. No answer. I got up slowly, dusted myself off, and made a mental note. No more shortcuts. I walked back out of the alley the way I had come, ready for the long walk up the hill that now didn't seem like such a gigantic task. I reached into my back pocket to find my wallet. I opened it to find my whole $7 and all my punch cards. Actually, I muttered to myself, I think this taco place is still open. The family had all gathered at Mrs. Iris Kingswell's household. She wanted them all here for her last moments, for Iris felt she would soon pass away from this world. Her family members took turns speaking with Iris and spending time with her. Colton, her oldest grandson, was the last to enter her room. Colton, please have a seat, Iris spoke softly, her voice hoarse, motioning to a chair. How are you feeling, Grandma? He asked, sitting with a frown. I'm all right, but I need to tell you something. Iris then added, "Something significant? Should I go get Mom?" Colton said, going to stand, and his grandmother shook her head. "No, this is something I want to tell you only." Iris smiled, and he leaned back in his chair, nodding. "Okay, what do you want to tell me?" A sigh of relief escaped his grandmother's lips as she began to tell her story. When Iris was growing up, her only companion was her father, since her mother had passed away when she was young. As she grew older, however, her father fell in love with a woman in their small town. Iris knew her father wouldn't be alone forever and had to accept that he would start dating again. This woman, however, made Iris's skin crawl. But she was willing to push that aside if her father was happy. Or until one night when Iris suddenly awoke from a deep sleep. She saw Vidya, her father's girlfriend, walk past her open bedroom door and down the hallway, her eyes glowing. Sitting upright in bed, Iris watched this woman approach her father's bedroom. Slowly getting out of bed, Iris tiptoed quietly down the hall. She stopped watching from her father's open doorway. His girlfriend is standing at the end of his bed, just staring at him. Taking a step back, the floorboard under her foot creaked, and Vidya snapped her head in the direction of the sound. Cursing, Iris tried to sink into the hallway's darkness as much as she could. The woman smiled, mouthing, "I see you." Before Vidya could follow her, Iris ran to her room and hid under her covers, only having a tiny opening to peep out of. A thudding of footsteps came down the hallway, stopping at Iris's open door. "Iris?" A voice called to her in a hiss. "Go away, go away, go away." Closing her eyes as tightly as she could, Iris prayed that Vidya would leave. There was a task, and Vidya clicked her tongue in disappointment. The woman left her doorway, and Iris peeked her head out, sighing in relief. Vidya had left. Why had she been here in the first place? In the morning, Iris spoke to her father about what had happened the previous night. "Dad, did you invite Vidya to spend the night?" "No, I didn't. Why do you ask? She was here last night." Her father furrowed his brow and lowered his coffee cup. "What do you mean she was here?" he asked, confused. Iris fidgeted in her seat, looking down at the table. "Last night, I saw Vidya inside the house. She walked through the halls and stood at the foot of your bed, her eyes glowing yellow." Her father laughed. Her eyes were glowing. "Iris, you had to be dreaming." "But I wasn't." She stood, slamming her hands on the table. The medium-sized round table shook, causing her empty glass to topple over and roll across the floor. Iris's father stood to his full height, that casting a shadow over her. "Go to your room," he instructed. She knew without even looking at his face that he was angry. Without a word, she turned, leaving the dining room and upstairs into her bedroom. Iris shut her door and screamed into her hands, frustrated. How could she prove that Vidya was here? She paced the carpeted floor of her bedroom, running her hands through her hair, rattled with nervousness. An old camcorder, once her mother's, was stored in the attic. She could set it up to catch Vidya entering their home. Then her father would have to believe her. Right? Hearing the front door close signaled that her father had left. Iris snuck out of her room and up the stairs into the attic. Going through the boxes with her mother's name on them, she found the old camcorder and the charging cord. Now, she had to find out where to set it up without her father finding it and taking it down. That night, they ate dinner silently, neither wanting to speak to each other. As she put her dishes in the sink, her father said goodnight and she went to her room. Iris settled into bed and slept, feeling mental and physical exhaustion wash over her. That night would be the last time she would see her father. Looking back on it, Iris wished she had at least said, "I love you" one last time. She was awoken by the sound of crunching and slurping. A gurgling sound was coming from down the hall. Iris's heart thumped in her chest as she scrambled out of bed and grabbed the hidden camera. She crept slowly down the hall, her breathing ragged, tiptoeing towards her father's room. Aiming at the camera inside, she pointed it into the darkness. Looking through the lens, she saw it. Vidya was eating her father. She was tall and hunched over her fingers, long with talons for fingernails. Vidya's bloody mouth was full of rows of sharp teeth with pieces of flesh stuck between them. Her head cocked to the side, listening as she chewed, and then it jerked in Iris's direction. Iris held her breath, hoping Vidya would not see her, but she was wrong. The woman stood upright, and what looked like feathers stuck around her as she approached the door. She needed to run away from Vidya. So she did, with the camera tucked under her arm. Iris ran down the stairs as her father's bedroom door burst open, and a rapt cry escaped the woman, who chased after her. The young girl just needed to get out the front door and make her way to the neighbor's house, and she would be safe. She got swatted like a fly against a wall, which caused her to drop the camera. Iris needed to defend herself, fumbling around in the dark. She grabbed the baseball bat her father kept behind the door in case of intruders and swung with all her might. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Each time the young girl swung, the bat made contact, making a sickening, wet, and crunching sound. Iris opened her eyes, which she didn't know were closed, and dropped the bat from her hands. There on the ground was Vidya's mangled form. Colton was on the edge of his seat as his grandmother paused. "What happened after that?" he asked. "I called the police and they came to the house to investigate. A pair of detectives named Pierce and Morrison took Vidya's body away, along with the cam recorder. My home turned into a giant crime scene," Iris replied. Colton became silent as he watched his grandmother close her eyes. "I lost my father that night, all because of that monster." Her voice was a low whisper now. "Grandma? I'm all right, my boy. I'm just exhausted. Will you tell your mother to come sit with me?" Iris requested. Colton nodded and stood from his chair, walking towards the door. He looked over his shoulder at his grandmother before entering the crowded room of people soaking in what she had told him. Had all this really happened to her? What was that creature that she saw? As he approached his mother, Colton, she was standing with someone he didn't know. Everything about this man was clean-cut and perfect, yet something about his smile seemed unnaturally stretched. His mother introduced him as Eben. "Grandma wants you," Colton interjected before his mother could explain who Eben was further. She blinked in surprise and nodded, apologizing to the man, who shook his head and watched as she walked away. Eben's expression changed to that of a predator being interrupted from a meal. "I don't know who you are, but stay away from my mother," Colton warned. Eben laughed, crossing his arms. His eyes had a sheen of gold on them. He leaned in close to the young man, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your mother will be next. Just like how my sister was taken away from me. I'll take away someone of equal value." Colton swallowed the hard lump in his throat, standing before the man unflinching. The young man would face Eben head-on if it were a fight he wanted. Then it was a fight he was going to get. Like his grandmother, he would defeat this creature and save his mother's life, even though Iris had failed to save her father. Colton would not fail to save his mother. Thank you guys for watching this video. Write in the comments what story you liked the most. I think second story was really weird and funny at the same time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Goodbye.